Okay, let's jump into the performance metrics. So performance metrics give us some numbers that we can use to compare different configurations. If you right click on one of your configs on the left-hand side, I'm going to start with the 5 PEQ filter. The third option down is going to be performance metrics. So let's go ahead and click on the performance metrics, and it's going to pop up this little window for us. And this is our kind of our basis for comparison that we're going to use for all of our different configs. And we'll walk through what each one of these sets of numbers means and which ones you really want to pay attention to. So here we can see there's three numbers on the right-hand side that we really want to care about. And those are the MLP target error, the seat-to-seat variation, and then the final error. And these are all essentially the easiest way to think about it is standard deviation. All right, so lower is better. So we're looking at the 5 PEQ number, and we're using the entire frequency range of the config. So we're looking at this whole 15 to 160 hertz. And we can see that our main listening position target error is 0.82. Our seat-to-seat variation is a little bit better, so they don't vary quite as much. This is a measure of how much they vary from the MLP, so they track pretty well at 0.76. And then the final error is a combination of these two. It looks like it's an average, or it might be an average. It's actually not. It's a little bit of a weighted average. It's probably more complicated than that, and Andy probably will cringe when he hears me say that. But it's essentially a combination of these two different metrics, and these are the three that I really look at and that I really pay attention to when I'm starting to kind of compare a couple of different optimizations. So I'm going to do real quick. So I'm going to open up I'm going to go back into a text editor here, and I'm going to kick open a new file. Because what I want to do, let's do file, new file. What I want to do is I want to jot some of these numbers down for each one of my configs. So this first one that we're looking at is our 5 PEQ config. This is 5 PEQs, and this is from 15 to 160 hertz. And then we're going to look at a couple of different ranges. And these are things that I just look at. The stuff that you care about might be a little bit different. But I tend to look at the total overall number. I tend to look at the low frequency response. So I'll look at that 15 to 50 hertz range. And then I tend to look at that crossover range as well. So I'll look at 50 hertz up to 120 hertz, which is, that's that really critical crossover range. So let's just jot these numbers down. So my total here is 0.82. This is going to be I could probably put this down here, but these will be MLP. Throw another little tab in here so everything lines up. My MLP, this is going to be my seat to seat, which is going to be 0.76. This is going to be my final, which is going to be 0.78. So that's my overall. So let's go back and take a look at some of these specific ranges. So what we can do is we can use a custom frequency range. So for that lower one, I can change it from 15. I can change this to 50, and I hit recalculate, and it's going to update these numbers. They're going to change. Remember, we're looking for lower numbers. Lower is better, right? So let me jump back over here and jot these down real quick. So my 15 to 50 range is 0.72. I've got 0.46, got 0.54. And again, that next range the one that I really care about as well is what's that crossover range. So that's going to be that 50 to 120 hertz range. 120, and we'll recalculate, and we'll go back and jot these down really quickly. So I've got 0.88, I've got 0.79, and I've got 0.82. So those are the performance metrics. And again, it's rough and tough. It's a standard deviation from perfect, which would be 0. Lower is better. So now we have some really quantitative numbers of how this particular 5 PEQ optimization performed overall for my main listening position from seat to seat. Also in some critical areas that we might really care about, right? The low frequency response, and then also the crossover range. So let's go grab these same numbers for our 8 PEQ. So I'm just gonna copy this, paste this. So it's gonna be an 8 PEQ. Go in and delete all of these so there's no confusion as to what we're looking at, what we're gonna compare. Last one, delete. All right, go back over here. We'll close this. We'll select our 8 PEQ, right click, performance metrics, move this out of the way, and we'll start jotting these numbers down. So for my MLP, I have a 0.86, I have a 0.65, and my final is a 0.71. So let's go grab 15 to 50. Recalculate. So for my MLP, I have a 0.42. My seat to seat, 0.40. And then a 0.41 final. Last but never least, my crossover region that I care about, 120. We'll recalculate that. And we've got an MLP of 1.06, 0.78, 0.86. Okay, so now I've got some real metrics that I can look at and really compare between the two. So what matters? Well, frankly, what matters to you? What's the most important to you? So here we can see that overall, my total MLP is not quite as flat. It's 0.86, 0.82, probably an inconsequential difference. They're going to be you're not going to be able to hear that difference that close. But my seat to seat variation is much, much better at a 0.76 to 0.75. And then my final is also a little bit better at 7.8 to 7.1. Down low, we can see we actually got some pretty big improvements. In that 15 to 50 hertz range. The 8 PEQ is a lot lower if we look at these numbers here, kind of in the middle. 0.72 versus 4.2, 4.6, and 54 versus 40 and 41 respectively. But in that crossover region, it doesn't look as good, right? So I got a 0.88, a 0.79, and a 0.82 versus a 1.0, a 0.78, and then a 0.86, which are both pretty close. But that MLP's got a lot more variance in that crossover region. Is that acceptable to you? Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. We're still plus or minus 3 dB, so it looks pretty good to me. But this is one of those examples where it actually does look a little bit worse on the charts. Again, we're still plus or minus 3 dB. But this is an area where, okay, maybe I don't like this. Maybe I run another optimization. Maybe I add in 2 more PEQ filters and get my full 10 PEQs per channel and see if that helps. Maybe I change my target level and I run it up against an 80 dB target level or an 85 dB target level just to see if I can get better results. Remember, we also are not allowing, if I go into my optimization options, under my parameter limits, we're allowing 0 boost. So maybe I run that 8 PEQ, but I add 3 dB. I let it boosting by 3 dB isn't such a bad thing. Maybe I let it boost by 3 dB here. I just want to make sure that if I set this to 3, as an example, that I set my constraints and I restrict the total boost to something a little bit larger. I would probably do something like 3.1. I really don't want to boost by a full decibel over. But those are some of the types of things that we can look at and play with to get much, much better results, okay? So now let's just make an assumption that I think that the 8 PEQ as it is a lot better, and that's what I want to implement. So let's poke around a little bit and see what kind of results that we've got. So for each one of my subs, the first thing I'm going to look at is I'm going to look at delay. Now what you're going to notice is the delay only exists on 3 subs. And if you've never integrated multiple subs before, that might look a little bit weird. It's like, why wouldn't I delay all four of them? Well, when I'm integrating subs with one another, the only thing that matters is their relative delays between each other. We're going to go in, and our room correction software, Odyssey or Dirac or ARC or whatever we're using, is going to set its own delay when it runs for everything overall. When it runs, so we don't have to worry about our delays between our aligned subs and our main system. RubyQ is going to take care of that for us. The other thing is, if I have delays on everything, it creates circular logic, and we can't solve when we don't have a fixed reference point for one of our subs. So only one of them only one of them is missing the delay, but all the other ones have that. So if I click on the delays, I can see, hey, I've got a 6 millisecond delay here. I've got a 9 millisecond delay here. And I've got a negative 19. So that's an interesting one. So I've got two positive delays, and I've got two negative, and I got a negative delay. That's kind of a problem, because most DSPs, many DSP included, can't really handle, making something faster, right? We can slow things down. We can't make it faster. Fortunately, there is a nice feature here in MSO that will let us normalize that. So if I right click over here on my subwoofer channels, there's an option down here for normalizing my delays. So I want to go ahead and normalize my delays. So we're going to click that button, and it says, hey, we're going to make some changes. Remember, we had some limitations. There were some limitations on delays. It's increased that. This is not a problem in the mini DSP 2.4 HD. It may be a problem in the non-HD versions. I think one of the limitations there is it doesn't have the delay range that we get from that's available in the HD. So if we close that down and we go back and look at our delays, it moved our delay blocks around. So now this first sub has no delay block, but if I click my delays here, we can see we've got a 28 millisecond delay, a 25 millisecond, almost 26 millisecond delay, and then our last one's a 19 millisecond delay. So now we can see our delays are all something that we can go in and input into a mini DSP. Gains, we see our gains, 11.5, minus 15, minus 10, and minus 12. So it's cutting our delays. The reason the cuts are so big is because we have specified that 75 dB target line. If we increase our 75 dB target line to something like 80 or 85 dB, these gain values are going to get they're not going to cut as much, right? There's not going to be as much gain cut out of our subs. If I'm eyeballing this gain, that's minus 12, minus 10, minus 15, which is a max, and then a minus 11. I would be really comfortable moving this up at least 5, if not maybe 10 decibels, and then running another optimization to see what kind of results I get, again, because it's cut my gains quite a bit. That means I'm giving up potential output for my subs. I would probably go ahead and rerun this at like an 80 and then an 85 to see what kind of gains I get, and then to see what my curve looks like. And then again, we can go look. I'm not going to go through every PEQ, but here's an example of one. Hey, this is right at our max of 160 hertz. It's a 3.4 dB cut, and it's got a Q of 1.679. So this is great. So we've got kind of all these different things that we want to look at. So the last thing that we want to do here is let's figure out how we put this into our mini DSP. So if I go up here to the subwoofer channels and I right click on this, oops, not there, sorry, on my config, right click on my config, I can run this show filter report. So let's go ahead and run our filter report and let's see what that looks like.